more quickly than you think. So those are good updates, but the bad updates are when you obviously see those aerials and it is just totally, taking all the trees off. Every roof that wasn't basically a concrete roof seems to have come off in the eye wall areas, and very localized, but just terrible stuff.
That's what I noticed from the aerials. There was a lot of damage, but like even the sturdy structured homes, the concrete ones, that's what I was worried about. The walls were up, but the roofs got completely ripped off, so it exposed them. Which it looks horrible, Tim, but it also tells me at least there was places for people to shelter. And it wasn't probably fun when you're getting wet or to get wind and stuff blowing on you, but at least there was a safe place for people to ride this out, even though the roof got blown off, because those are survivable structures. You could survive in those structures in those winds.
Yeah, and you had that great map last week of the how many of the structures were considered good or not in different parts of the country. I do think it's not that recent, but having Gilbert as a benchmark storm within people's lifetimes, I hopefully that really upped the building standard. People say that it did. Our custodian here at the station, he's from Jamaica. I was talking to him about it the other day, and he said everything's been built differently since Gilbert, and some people can afford this or others can afford that, but either way, at least with a storm like this, you want to be in some place that has a concrete wall, and so people know that, and hopefully that was something that was taken into account. Still, communication seems tough. We haven't heard from people like iCyclone. He's been down there. I don't think we've heard from him yet, but I imagine we'll start to get more and more coming out more quickly, hopefully in the next couple of days.
Yeah, and I think that's the other reason why to watch what you see online, follow the government, because probably the people that saw the worst stuff have not been able to communicate with us yet. So probably a good idea to wait. They're going to hopefully get Starlinks. I know Starlink, like they did here in North Carolina, they're giving away free service as long as there is a device. So I'm sure those will start to pop up. Some of the resorts I know in Montego Bay have been posting from their Starlink. So that's something to keep in mind. And real quick, Tim, we're almost out of time here. A couple of the records, obviously this is all preliminary. We know this is probably going to be the third strongest from a pressure standpoint, and it's going to be the second, tied for the second for the strongest winds. And then you've got this other weird record, which is kind of floating around, this drop sound data of like 247 mile per hour winds in one of the drop sounds that has to be approved. This is going to go down as one of the strongest storms we've ever seen.
And considering the landfall intensity ties with Labor Day for the biggest in Atlantic history, too.
So, just a lot of records. So, thanks, everybody. Stick around. We've still got more news coming ahead. And trust me, we will see the sun by tomorrow.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us after the weather impact show we just had here on WCNC Plus. I am Colin Mayfield. For the next 2 hours, we'll have more of your news here inside the Impact studio. We're going to start with Senate Republicans who are releasing subpoenas sought by Jack Smith during the Trump first probe. If you remember who Jack Smith is, he was the Biden-era special counsel who deployed this probe into President Donald Trump's efforts to subvert the 2020 presidential election results. So we're going to hear more from Republicans right now on this.
Good afternoon, everybody. A little bit of history before I get to what we're releasing today. I started the investigation into Arctic frost July 2022 based on whistleblower disclosures. Based on these disclosures, we know that weaponized taxpayer-funded agents and prosecutors advanced the investigation. As Arctic frost advanced, 92 Republican organizations or individuals were targeted, not just Trump, and they were added to its scope. And author of that targeting list was Special Agent Walter Giardino. He's the same weaponized agent who was involved in other cases against Republicans, including Peter Navarro. We've learned Jack Smith secretly obtained phone record data from at least 8 senators and 1 congressman. I've recently been informed by Verizon that at least 11 members with Verizon accounts were affected. That includes a hard line for Senator Cruz's office and a staffer cell phone for former Senator Loeffler. AT&T informed me they challenged the legal basis for Jack Smith's efforts, and Smith backed down. So today, we're making public new records that I've obtained through legally protected whistleblower disclosures. 197 subpoenas were issued by Jack Smith and his team. These subpoenas were issued to 34 individuals and 163 businesses, including financial institutions. And one of the points of contact on many of these subpoenas was that person I previously named Special Agent Walter Giardino. The subpoena requested records and communications related to over 430 individual and organizations. All of them appear to be aimed at Republicans. A subpoena to Event Strategies requested records relating to Turning Point USA and the Republican Attorney General's Association. One subpoena to Apple sought records relating to Trump and the January 6th prison choir. Earlier this year, I obtained emails between and among J.P. Cooney, one of Jack Smith's prosecutors. That email exchange was March 2023 about a partisan news article on January 6th, and this is what Cooney said in the email. Can we do some work to nail down Trump's role in this, perhaps with the same process on Ed Henry's LLC, end quote. Just the next month, April 2023, Jack Smith and his team subpoenaed Apple for records relating to the very issue. A subpoena to an individual sought records and communications with, quote, any member, employee, or agent of the legislative branch of government, end quote. Another subpoena to an individual sought records relating to communications with media companies such as CBS, Fox News, Fox Business, Newsmax, Sinclair, and others. Other subpoenas to a bank, individual, and businesses sought records relating to White House advisors Stephen Miller, Dan Scavino, Jared Kushner, and Lara Trump. Some subpoenas to individuals and businesses sought statistical data and analysis relating to donors and fundraising efforts. Arctic Frost was the vehicle by which FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. Contrary to what Smith has said publicly, this was clearly a fishing expedition. If this had happened to Democrats, they'd be as rightly outraged as we are outraged. We're making these records public in the interest of transparency and so that the American people can draw their own conclusions. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank his staff for their tenacity and their cooperation in all of our joint investigations. I think it's important to note that the records that we are now making public and for purpose of transparency were not obtained from the agency. They were obtained through a whistleblower. So my first point is we need more whistleblowers. We need people, men and women inside these agencies who have integrity, who want to see the integrity and credibility of the Department of Justice, of the FBI restored, come forward. Because right now I think Kash Patel, Pam Bondi are overwhelmed by all the messes they're trying to clean up. The agencies have been, lost a lot of personnel. People simply couldn't serve the Trump administration. It's hard to hire people because of all the lawfare. And there's still partisan actors burrowed in trying to sabotage their efforts. So we need whistleblowers. The reason they come forward to Chairman Grassley is because he's been such a...
All right, folks, we're going to cut in to the Republicans talking right now. We do have one of our live reporters standing by. We're going to take a 2-minute break. Siobhan Riley is going to come on the other side and talk about this group seeking solutions to access for housing. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back inside the Impact Studio. We're going to bring in Siobhan Riley, our Nightside reporter who is working on the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence, trying to make access to housing easier for victims of domestic violence. And we know that there are so many struggles in this battle here. Let's just start there. What are people dealing with in trying to access this housing here, Siobhan?
Well, the problem is a lot of these survivors, they cannot get housing. Many of these shelters across the state, they are at 100% capacity and sometimes even more than that. So trying to find beds for these victims with their children is, in some cases, feels impossible for a lot of these victims right now.
That makes sense. So this nonprofit, let's talk a little bit about the coalition here. What type of steps are they taking? I wouldn't even know where to start. So kind of set our focus here for us.
Well, the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence, they do work very closely with a program called Safe at Home program. Mm-hmm. And in a nutshell, they connect DV agencies and shelters with landlords who are working on accepting not just funds from the government, but also accepting tenants that are referred to by these DV agencies. So that's just one step. But the biggest barrier they're facing right now is money. Yeah. They have been seeking money from a federal level as well as a state level, and the funding is just not there. And so unfortunately, when you don't have the funding, it's hard to find a place for these survivors and victims to go.
Certainly so. I can imagine, Siobhan, with some of the federal funding that we've seen stopped, we've got SNAP benefits running out this weekend. What is the optimism, if there is any there at all, that the federal government could relinquish the funds and help this coalition? Is there any there?
You know, I think that's tough to say, but I think right now, they're just depending on these nonprofits like the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Unfortunately, when the funds aren't there, it makes it hard to be optimistic for many of these families. But these nonprofits are doing everything they can, as well as other nonprofits across the state are doing what they can to work with these victims, because they're not just going to leave these victims out on the streets with their kids, so they have to come up with some type of solution. Yeah.
And there aren't, it doesn't seem like a lot of protections, right? People can get an EPO, but we've seen, right, it's really just kind of a piece of paper in and of a sense. Some of these victims, I've spoken to some of them myself in recent reports, that it's hard for them to feel like they're protected and supported, and obviously having a safe space can do wonders for these individuals. And as you said, many have young kids with them and children in tow, so it really highlights the importance that the funding is there. In terms of the solution side of this, are there other, because you kind of spoke about other organizations, do we know of other organizations that are coming in hand with the coalition to work with in this?
They work with organizations across, they said they work with 100 counties.
Wow.
Here in North Carolina. So they are definitely working hand in hand, and any time that organizations have questions or need a place to send some of these victims, they are usually the first person or the first organizations that get the phone calls would be the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Okay.
Last thing I just popped in my mind. We know how scarce affordable housing is, and rent is going up. Did the coalition talk about, trying to dance around those type of challenges in this place where we don't find a lot of affordable housing, and just housing in general for folks to live that might need a little help?
Well, they said the housing crisis is the reason they're in this situation right now, because rent is so expensive. The average person can't afford to pay rent. Rent is sometimes more than a mortgage for some people. So finding the funds for this is very tough. And they didn't really sugarcoat anything. I mean, the bottom line is they don't have the money, they don't have the shelter, but they are trying very hard to work closely with that Safe at Home program, which seems like the biggest hope right now.
Awesome. So tonight's story will be on at 11. Siobhan, can you talk a little bit about who you spoke to today, just so we know, and give us a little clue about what we're going to be watching for tonight?
Yes, I spoke with the legal director of the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and she's really just saying how important it is for these victims to get the support they need. So she will definitely share her story. She'll share some data because, again, we were saying that some of these shelters are at 100% capacity and sometimes even more than that. She'll also talk about how long they're staying. People are staying at shelters a lot longer. It used to be 30 to 60 days, but now it can be anywhere from 90 days even up to a year. And she says that is considered a long time
Yeah.
for someone to stay at a shelter.
Yeah. Awesome. Appreciate your help. I know that along with this, folks who are looking out for any resources, definitely look for this story tonight. It'll be on at 11. Siobhan has worked very hard to craft this piece. So looking forward to it. Siobhan, anything else, last minute pieces or last minute things I didn't ask you that you wanted to get across?
I think you really asked a lot of good questions. I mean, I think the bottom line is the housing crisis.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's putting these DV victims in a place where some of them feel forced to stay with their abuser because they don't have a house and they don't want to be homeless.
Right, and when you're relying on somebody economically, it can be hard to say goodbye to them because you can realize, right, what might be the other side of that coin if that person isn't involved. So again, that's why it's so hard for these individuals to leave, and it is such a cycle for these people too, and causes so much trauma, not just to them but to the family as a whole. So appreciate you shining a light on this. Hopefully, federal funds will be back so that the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence can do the work that they're doing. But again, Siobhan, thank you so much for this report.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 2-minute break. On the other side, we'll go back to Republicans talking about Special Counsel Jack Smith. Welcome back, everybody, inside the Impact Studio. We're going to go back to the Republicans talking about Special Counsel Jack Smith.
They're the heads of them. I don't think they have the control. I think they're being sabotaged within. But the American people need to understand exactly what happened. And again, I'm calling on members of the Judiciary Committee to help Senator Grassley and myself get to the bottom of this so we can expose this, so this doesn't happen again in America. This has to end. With that, I'll turn it over to Senator Cornyn.
I want to thank Senator Grassley and Senator Johnson for their perseverance in this investigation. This is the United States of America. It's not a banana republic. It's not a country that condones partisan lawfare against your political opponents. We don't have the time to go through all of the many ways that the Democratic Party and President Trump's opponents tried to target him and tried to destroy him, including people like James Comey, who single-handedly wanted to get a special counsel appointed, where a 2-year investigation followed with no result, no evidence of any legal violation. But I can't think of any greater evidence of weaponization in the fact as you heard from Senator Grassley and Senator Johnson, this extended far beyond President Trump and extended to President Trump's supporters, not only here in the United States Senate, but more broadly. Jack Smith did not act alone. Yes, he was a special counsel. He was appointed by Merrick Garland, and he had responsibilities to report to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, Joe Biden's Attorney General, under the rules regarding special counsel. Merrick Garland was a member of Joe Biden's cabinet. He was willing to do whatever Joe Biden and his political operation wanted him to do, including destroying President Trump, including abusing our justice system for partisan purposes. And here, to me, is the most troublesome part of all this. If they would do that to the President of the United States, if they would do this to United States senators and members of Congress, what would they do to you? People who don't enjoy the bully pulpit or the platform that elected representatives have. This ought to be a chilling message to each and every American who loves this great country and believes in our constitutional system and equal justice under the law. Thank goodness for Senator Grassley and Senator Johnson for their investigation, but we will get to the bottom of this. Senator Cruz.
Arctic frost is Joe Biden's Watergate. Merrick Garland was a fundamentally corrupt attorney general. Jack Smith was a fundamentally corrupt prosecutor. This was a political enemies list from the beginning. 197 subpoenas for 430 Republican entities and individuals. That is an absolute and egregious abuse of power. The Biden Justice Department signed off on issuing subpoenas for the phone records of at least 9 U.S. senators. 20% of the Republicans in the United States Senate were the target of this fishing expedition. They did so in complete contravention of the Constitution, of separation of powers, of the speech and debate clause, of free speech, of basic rights of privacy. This is an executive who believes it is justified spying on their opponents in the legislature because they convince themselves the ends justify the means. I want to talk to you about one of those subpoenas. One of those subpoenas went from Jack Smith to AT&T, seeking my cell phone communications. It went to AT&T, and I actually want to commend AT&T for doing the right thing. AT&T is based in Texas. AT&T looked at that subpoena, and they went to their legal counsel. And they said, what should we do with that subpoena? And their legal counsel said, you cannot comply because this is protected by the speech and debate clause of the U.S. Constitution. And so AT&T declined to comply, did not hand over my cell phone records. Now, one might ask, ordinarily, a phone company being asked to hand over the phone records of a sitting senator would notify that senator. Well, there was a reason AT&T did not do so. Accompanying the subpoena was an order, which I have in my hand right here, an order that was signed by Judge James E. Boasberg. Now, who is Boasberg? Boasberg is that radical leftist judge who is out of control, who has been issuing nationwide injunctions, one after the other, trying to stop President Trump from carrying out his mandate from the voters. Judge Boasberg issued an order to AT&T and signed that order, prohibiting AT&T from informing me of this subpoena for at least 1 year. And Judge Boasberg gave the basis for that order, and I'm going to quote from the order Judge Boasberg signed. The court finds reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure will result in destruction of or tampering with evidence, intimidation of potential witnesses, and serious jeopardy to the investigation. That's an order a judge signed. Now, I can tell you right now, there is precisely zero evidence to conclude that I am likely to destroy or tamper with evidence or to intimidate potential witnesses. Zero evidentiary basis for that. This order is an abuse of power. This order is a weaponized legal system. My assumption, we don't have the subpoenas that were issued for the other senators, but my assumption is Judge Boasberg printed these things out like the placemats at Denny's, one after the other. We don't know that for a fact, but I feel confident that he concluded it's likely that Lindsey Graham would destroy evidence, and Marsha Blackburn would destroy evidence, and Eric Schmidt would destroy evidence, and Chuck Grassley would destroy evidence. If a litigant makes a claim for which there is no factual basis, that litigant is subject to sanctions in federal court. And if a judge signs an order reaching a factual conclusion for which there is zero evidence whatsoever, that judge is abusing his power. I am right now calling on the House of Representatives to impeach Judge Boasberg. Judge Boasberg put his robe down, stood up and said, "Sign me up to be part of the partisan vendetta against 20% of the Republicans in the Senate." That is a dereliction of duty and a violation of the judicial oath. And I want to thank Chairman Grassley and Chairman Johnson for pursuing this tenaciously like a dog on a bone. We are going to get the answers of every person who signed off on this abuse of power, and mark my words, there will be accountability for these zealots who wanted to corrupt the Department of Justice and corrupt the judiciary in order to try to attack.
All right, folks, want to cut into this. We do have a live event, and in fact, we're waiting for this Turning Point USA event to start in Oxford, Mississippi. We do believe the Vice President will speak, and Charlie Kirk's wife will also speak, but not too far from this, Democrats from Mississippi are holding their own rally event not too far from Oxford itself, ahead of this Turning Point event, so we want to get both sides. We're going to start with this first before we take you to the event here in Mississippi, the Turning Point event, but first, this is the Democrat side, the rally before the event. All right, folks, look like we just hit the tail end of this event, potentially. It looks like some folks are still staying there, and it could be that they have another part of this panel to go. We'll keep a live look into this here. Like I said, this Turning Point event that we're going to go to here is in Oxford, Mississippi. The Vice President is supposed to speak at this, including Charlie Kirk's wife as well, who will be here. And then, as I was saying a little bit earlier, they're having a breakout session not too far from where this Turning Point USA event is happening. Democrats from the state of Mississippi are hosting this. And in fact, both rooms look pretty crowded, no matter the event that you're at right now. So, again, I think we'll go back in just a couple of minutes once things are able to kick back into action at this event. But for now, we'll go back to the Republicans who are on Capitol Hill talking about Special Counsel Jack Smith.
Before us, I am looking forward to bringing the wireless companies before us and finding out exactly what happened. No citizen of the United States should ever be subject to treatment like this. And as Senator Cornyn said, if they are doing this to us, what did they do to all the moms and dads that went to school board meetings? What did they do to the pro-lifers that stood on a sidewalk and held a sign? What did they do to people that were supporting President Donald Trump or people that were supporting Republican candidates. Jack Smith moved forward after Christopher Wray wrote a memo on April 4th of 22. And you all should read the memo. It is how to write, it's going to be textbook for how to write a fishing expedition memo. Nebulous, vague language, alleging, assuming, things that should never be done. And then Lisa Monaco puts her mark on it, encouraging Merrick Garland to sign it so that they could put Jack Smith in as a special counsel. Thank goodness Kash Patel has fired every single person that was in that CR-15 unit, every single one of them. But we need to have hearings. We have encouraged the DOJ to refer Jack Smith to the Office of Professional Conduct, and they need to work with us to provide the documents so we can have a more fulsome picture about what has transpired with this. It is worse than Watergate. It is deep, it is wide, and we are just beginning to scratch the surface. Okay, and Schmidt.
Well, Lindsay, go ahead.
Lindsay.
No, go ahead.
We'll do it by height. I'll go.
You're on the short end of that one.
Yeah. I'm closer to the earth. So here's what I'm thinking about. If Trump had not run in 2024, would any of this happened? No. So what I want to explain to the people of the country is that within several days of him announcing, I'm going to seek the White House again, an avalanche began to form. And I really do believe that none of this would have been happening if Trump had set out the 2024 cycle. But once he announced, I'll have my own chart one day, we'll show you what happened and when it happened. Within about 8 months of announcing, he had 91 felony charges against him in Georgia and New York and other places. So here's what I think.
All right, folks, got to cut into this and go to the Turning Point event happening in Oxford, Mississippi. I do believe Charlie Kirk's wife is just about to take the stage, so we'll go to this live right now.
A family, it's beautiful. And to the Turning Point USA chapters that are watching all across America right now, you are the heartbeat of this future and of this movement. Everything that Charlie built, you guys are the legacy holders of that. You are living proof that his mission did not die with him. It lives through you. And Charlie always said the next generation will decide whether freedom endures. And because of you, I know that freedom will endure.
The next speaker is a very, very special speaker, and she has had a heroic last year, and I believe she's the best mom in the world, truly the best mom in the world. She is my hero and the love of my life. Join me in welcoming Erica Kirk.
Good evening, Ole Miss. Oh, man. Love you guys, too. Oh, it's hard not to cry after watching that. I haven't seen that portion of him saying that video since that day happened. But Charlie, when he came onto campus, he loved to immerse himself in the culture of the campus that he was in.
And so, from word on the street, you guys have a chant out there. I hear it's a good one. It's hotty toddy. I love it, but it's a tremendous honor and blessing to be on stage today, and this is what Turning Point USA is all about. This is what the future of our country is all about, and I want to thank you all also on a personal level for all of your prayers and all of your support, not only for our family, but for the Turning Point USA family, which includes all of you, especially those that are students, a part of the Turning Point USA chapter at Ole Miss. So I love you guys, truly. This whole, you guys have no idea how helpful it is to have all of you in my life, because you help me feel even more deeply connected to my husband. And I thank you for that. I thank all of you for that. And I say that also because you guys are the heartbeat of Turning Point USA. You're the heartbeat of this organization, and every time we were at an event, especially one that Charlie was speaking at, he would always ask beforehand, he would always ask Mikey or the team, he'd say, who in the audience is a Turning Point USA chapter leader or chapter member? And whenever there was a student there, he would stop everything before the event and he would sit down with them. He would ask you what your name is, what you're studying, what is the issues that are going on campus. He would take the time to make sure that you guys knew he was investing into you, into your chapter, into your school, because that was a pulse point for him. And being on campus right now for me is a spiritual reclaiming of territory. And let me explain that, because there is a lot of symbolism in today. It's Wednesday, 7 weeks. And the more that I am coming to grips with the permanency of this nightmare, the more that I'm starting to realize and witness that the enemy, he doesn't want you. He wants your territory. He wants your influence. And when our team asked my dear friend, Vice President J.D. Vance, to speak today, I really prayed on it, because obviously it's a very emotional day. But I could just hear Charlie in my heart. I could just hear him say, go reclaim that territory, babe. Go. The battle's already won. God's love conquers. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here because this moment, it can either be your breaking point or your wake-up call, essentially your turning point, if you will. And at this moment, every single one of us has a choice to make, whether we stand for freedom or we're just going to fall for everything else. But I want to encourage you, especially the students here, find your voice. You are the courageous generation. That's what you are. All of you. Gen Z, you are the courageous generation. Hear me when I say that. My husband believed that to his core. That's why he went on campuses. That's why he was trying to reach you. You are the courageous generation. Own it. Make him proud. And students beyond Ole Miss, if you are pursuing a chapter on your campus, harness this amazing opportunity to advocate for something that you truly believe in. and express it in the most articulate way of what exactly you're advocating for. You're advocating for America, you're advocating for freedom of speech. Because our chapters on high school campuses, I love it. Charlie was so excited when he named the programs for high schools. He said, we're going to name it Club America. Because he goes, who could hate that name? It's the perfect name, Club America. And he loved it. Who could be against it? And I want you to know that if you are trying to start a chapter, I'm with you, we're with you, Charlie's with you. You have an arsenal of Turning Point USA staff members that are with you. But I also, what I've been able to sit back and witness is the leaders that have stepped up to ensure that chapters can happen. For example, I don't know if you guys saw what happened earlier this week with Governor Ron DeSantis, which is amazing. I want to give him a massive shout out because he said, we're announcing a partnership with Turning Point USA. We want to make sure that all high schools in Florida, anybody in a high school that wants to start a Club America chapter will be able to do that. There will be no impediments to that, and certainly no discrimination. That's amazing. And then also, Governor Youngkin. I want to thank him as well. He donated generously to Turning Point USA to support new Turning Point USA chapters all over the Commonwealth of Virginia. How powerful is that? It's amazing. I'm so grateful. So when I heard that, I just looked up and I was like, all right, Charlie, 2 down, 48 to go. I see you. But Club America and Turning Point USA chapters, if you're wondering what those values are, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that's what our country was founded on. And when you succeed in establishing that chapter, I want to commend you because that experience will leave a mark on you that will influence every choice that you make for the rest of your life and generations to come. Earn your voice. Charlie loved the word earn. Earn your voice. This is about your legacy. Each one of you in this room, everyone watching, when you earn your voice and you stand up for what is right, that is a part of your legacy, your family's legacy, just as much as it is part of Charlie's legacy. Don't forget that. Don't ever forget that. Because if there's one thing I've learned, especially being with Charlie for the past 7 years, it's that the hope we're looking for is not found in Washington. It's not found in media. It's right here. All of you. This is the hope. And he saw that. He saw that. It's in stadiums like this. Charlie had a visual in his head. He loved the on-campus events, but for the night events, he would send Tyler pictures and the team pictures of, I want our chapter events to look like this. And he sent a picture of one of the largest college football stadiums in the country packed. That was his vision. And that's what makes all of this so powerful, because your generation is living at a crossroads. And you are living in one of the most defining moments in American history. And we are all witnessing in real time the battle that is raging for the soul of your generation. Again, your generation. This is far more than political. And you will hear the world and the culture, for that matter, pressure you and say, go with the flow, don't ruffle feathers, don't say that, you might offend someone, you might lose some friends if you wear a red hat, if you go to a Turning Point USA chapter event. But when I hear that, I need to be so blunt and honest with you now, because before, when I heard it, I said, okay. Now when I hear that, if you're worried about losing a friend, you might. I lost my friend. I lost my best friend. And if you're nervous about standing up for the truth, the assassination of my husband puts into perspective all those fears. It really does. Because my husband never went with the flow. He swam in the streams of significance. And Charlie knew so deeply to his core that comfort doesn't change the world. And you cannot influence the world when you look like it. The enemy of truth doesn't need to destroy a nation overnight. He just needs to convince people that truth no longer matters. And the enemy thrives when Christians don't speak up, when citizens don't vote, when students don't think for themselves. But in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 11, it says, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." That's what it means to live as salt and light. To bring flavor to a world gone bland, and clarity to a world that lost its way and it's lost in confusion. Because Christians are called to go into the public space to correct error with truth, and that's what my husband did. When he would sit there with his microphone, I got to watch this evolve over the years. At first, he would hold the microphone the whole time. He would listen. Then as the years went on, he would put the microphone down. And he wasn't listening, he was hearing. He was absorbing what the students were saying and what they were asking. He was engaging. He was calm. He wasn't combative. He never insulted. He just wanted you to think. Again, like I said, he never told you what to say. He just wanted to challenge you so that what your convictions were, you actually understood why you had them, rather than they being talking points because your professor told you so or your friend told you so. He wanted the best of you because he demanded the best of himself. And Charlie would say this all the time: your rights don't come from the government, they come from God. And he knew what every founding father knew, and nearly almost every university has forgotten, that you cannot have freedom without virtue, and you cannot have virtue without God. And that's what makes this nation so different. That's what makes it worth defending as a courageous generation. And another thing that Charlie used to say all the time is that it does not take skill to be courageous. It takes a choice to be courageous. And now's the time to make that choice. Either you sit on the sidelines. I mean, I don't know what else can wake you up. I really don't know what else could stir that fire within you to get involved or to use your voice or to make a difference. If you're looking for another sign, I have no idea what to tell you. I just want to encourage you, though, that yes, this is about America, and yes, my husband would say saving Western civilization. That's true on both fronts. But deeper than that, this is about your soul, because the fight for freedom starts within, inside of each and every one of you. So again, please stand firm against the wickedness of the devil and the schemes of man. Be alert, because his tactics are so clever. What he'll do is he will find one thing. He will find fear, he'll find disappointment, he will find one thing, and he will wedge it in between you and the Lord, and he will make it grow. He will make it grow so much that you lose sight. It becomes this, almost like an eclipse, where the truth is hidden behind it. And yes, the light's still there, but you can't see it anymore. That's the enemy's tactic. And the bottom line is that the enemy doesn't need to change your theology. He just needs to change your vision. And if he can get in your head and blur your vision and distort your vision, he'll do it. He'll do whatever he can. But what the enemy forgets, though, is that the presence of a shadow is proof that there is light. He forgets that. And Charlie's murder might seem like we're standing in a shadow, as if death was the victory meant for the enemy, but looking around in this arena, you are proof that this light of truth burns so brightly. So brightly. The Lord is calling you to rise. Please hear me when I say that courageously. He is. Do not be afraid. It is so easy to be afraid, but we are commanded to not be afraid. And when you take that stand, it will encourage and inspire someone else to do the same. Whether that is someone in your circle, whether that's a family member, whether that's someone you've never even met before because they saw you posting something on social media. You can't change a nation if you're enslaved to fear. And you can't call out corruption if you're still chained to comfort. And you can't stand for truth if you first do not kneel before the Lord. And I know I keep saying it, but I'm trying to drive home a point with you all being labeled as the courageous generation, because this generation will decide if America remembers who she is or if she'll forget. And I believe with all my heart that God placed you here now in Ole Miss, not by accident, but by assignment. There is no mistake that you are here in this stadium and arena today. No mistake. God doesn't make mistakes. Doesn't make mistakes. And when being on this campus, I think of 18-year-old Charlie, who would always say, you know, when I started this, I had no money, no connections, and I had no idea what I was doing. But what he did know what he was doing was that he was obeying the Lord. He was obeying what the Lord had placed inside of his heart to fight for. He did. And he persevered. He persevered, and look what he left us. Look what he left us with. He didn't leave us empty-handed. He built a machine, and all of you are a part of that. Again, the heartbeat of Turning Point USA. That's what happens when you obey the Lord. A movement like this, it becomes unstoppable. It becomes the revival that it is. And I just want this to be the generation that says, we will not apologize for loving our country first. We will not be silent about our faith. We will not back down when the world tells us to kneel. because we bow only to the King of Kings. And it's from him that we rise. I personally still believe in America. I still believe in her founding. I still believe in her future. I don't care if people think it sounds crazy, but I still believe that our nation can heal. But we can't save a country that we're too afraid to defend. We can't. On a more personal note, when we first moved in our home, inside of our bedroom, I had on the side wall, when you walk in, it was above the bookshelves, it says, on 2 framed pieces of paper, it says, "They will be known by the boldness of their faith." And when I hung that, as many women can attest to this, when you hang things, you see them all the time, you just kind of go about your life. And so, being in the position that I am now, it took me a while to even just make it back into our bedroom. I used to sprint from the opening door into the bathroom and sprint out. I was not ready to walk into our bedroom yet. And when I was finally able to sleep in our bed for the first time, I slept on his side of the bed. And I noticed, because he had to sleep a certain way on his side, facing the outside of the bed, because he had a bad back. I'm sure most of you didn't know that, but he had a really bad back. Anyways, so it's also why he wore compression socks too. I know a lot of people are like, why do you wear compression socks? Circulation. Anyways, so he would sleep that direction, and so I found myself sleeping that direction as well. And when I woke up, for the past several nights that I've been able to be in there, I saw that the first thing I'd see is that on the wall, "They will be known by the boldness of their faith." And I thought to myself, he saw that every single morning he woke up. I didn't, because I'm on the other side of the bed, so I'm facing the window. But he saw that every single morning. And then I thought to myself, because when I go to the office, I will never sit in his office chair. So there's like a couch on the side when you walk in, and I sit on the couch. And on his desk, flanked between the Bible verse of Micah, chapter 6, verse 3, it all kind of came together for me. So he sees us on the wall, and then he sees on his desk these 3 questions that he would ask himself every single day. And it would be, what is something I can do for someone today? The second one was, what is something I can do to add value to the world today? And the third was, how can I honor God today? Those were the 3 questions combined with the words he saw every single morning. So to me, seeing on his desk, that was him suited up with the armor of the Lord every day. That was his combination. And what I'm realizing with that is those were the action points of how to have courage. Because you can ask me, well, how do I become courageous? Ask yourself those 3 questions every single day. And I promise you, you will get courage. You will. Because what death amplifies even more is that you only get one life. Just one. That's it. It's an eternal life. So that's why you have to live like it matters. But I want to remind you that God has created you for greatness. Not for something that's lifeless, just greatness. And the question isn't how long you're going to live. It's what are you going to do with your life and the time that the Lord has blessed you with? What are you going to do with that? That's the question. And when you get to the end of your life, will the Lord be proud of what you stood for? Will you be able to say that you ran the race, that you fought the good fight? Or will you realize that you wasted your time that the Lord has blessed you with chasing after things that didn't even matter? Hold that into perspective. And remember, being the courageous generation that you are, stand up for the truth, defend life, love your family fearlessly, love your spouse fearlessly, love this country, defend her, and serve our God. And don't think that it's someone else's role to do it. You do it. You do it. Do it for Charlie. Do it for Charlie. And I am tremendously blessed and honored tonight to be able to introduce to you a very, very dear friend and his wife. They are incredible. And I see no one will ever replace my husband. No. But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD and Vice President JD Vance. I do. And that's why I'm so blessed to be able to introduce him tonight, because he understands the fight that we're up against, and he can articulate that in a way that transcends race, that transcends demographic backgrounds. He's an amazing man. So please help me welcome to the stage Vice President JD Vance.
I am honored to introduce a friend of mine, somebody that I have just been so thrilled to see ascend American politics. His story is uniquely American. Growing up in poverty, difficult circumstances, serving his country honorably and heroically in the United States Marine Corps, being an America First champion in Congress, and somebody who I know will bring this vision to make America great again. Join me in welcoming JD Vance, everybody.
Oh, miss, I got a question. Are you ready? Wow, that was impressive. They told me that would be impressive, and they were exactly right. So let me say a few words of thank you first to my dear friend and the widow of my dear friend Charlie Kirk. Erica, you have been such an amazing inspiration to the entire country. How much do we love Erica Kirk? She's done a hell of a job. I want to thank, we have a couple of Mississippi senators here. We have both Senator Roger Wicker and Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Thank you guys for being here. We have the governor of Mississippi with us. We got an all-star crowd here. Governor, thank you for being here. And most importantly, we have got over 10,000 students from across Mississippi. We are proud to have you, and we know that you are the future of Charlie Kirk's legacy. So thank you for being here. You know, I got this whole speech written, and I'm not going to deliver any of what I had written. I'm just going to speak from the heart, because that's what Charlie would so often do. And you know, when I think about what we lost 6 weeks ago, it feels like forever ago when I was in a meeting in the West Wing, and one of my staff members came in and said that Charlie had been shot, and then I looked at my phone and I saw all the text messages and realized that my dear friend had been very seriously injured. Now, in the West Wing at that time, we actually thought that Charlie had a chance. We didn't know that he was eventually going to pass away. There were initial reports from the medical team that maybe things were going okay, and of course, eventually Charlie took his last breath and went home to be with his Lord and Savior. I remember thinking at that moment, first, of course, about Erica and the children. They've got their oldest, their daughter, is very similar in age to our youngest child, and I remember thinking, what a terrible tragedy for that family. And the second thing that I thought was, what a terrible tragedy for the United States of America. Because Charlie wasn't just a political figure. He wasn't just a guy who went around campus and said very interesting things and hosted all of these debates. He was a person who, particularly to the young people of this country, to all of you, he had the very best advice. And I think that's the most important way for me to honor Charlie, which is to repeat that advice, something I found true in my own life. Charlie wanted all of you, whatever life path you chose, whatever career you chose, whatever you ultimately did for a living, Charlie wanted you, more than anything, to invest in the things that were worth having, to build a life that was worth building. And that started, the most important advice he ever gave you was fall in love, get married, and start a family. And I can't honor Charlie without repeating that most important advice. Now, most of you are probably too young to have found the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Some of you are lucky enough to have found that person already. But I will tell you, if you're as lucky and blessed as I have been, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And I found that person in my lovely wife, Usha, our second lady, who is here with us today. She's sitting in the audience somewhere. I don't know where. But I love you, honey. And have children. That's something Charlie also always told. I grew up in a generation. I'm 41 years old. I'm a millennial. And if you're being uncharitable, you would call me a geriatric millennial, which I really hate. I really hate being called a geriatric millennial. But here I am at 41 talking to all of you like I've got great wisdom. Here's the thing. The one regret, the only regret that I really have in my entire life, and I've made plenty of mistakes, but the one regret that I have is that, frankly, I wish we had started having kids sooner. Because when you're a young father, you realize what an incredible blessing they are, but they're also very exhausting. And I know here at Ole Miss, we like to party a lot. And I know at Ole Miss, occasionally some of you will have a few drinks on a Friday or Saturday, or hopefully not a Tuesday night, but I'm sure that happens from time to time here in SEC country. But here's the thing. When you go out until 3 in the morning and wake up at 6 a.m. for class, the thing that I have learned in my old age is that incredible energy, God actually meant it for another purpose, and that purpose was to help take care of a family. So while you're young, have those babies if you're able to. That's something Charlie said all the time. But if you think of that advice, Charlie wanted you to get married. He wanted you to fall in love. He wanted you to build a family. He wanted you to find a vocation. That was the advice that he gave on campuses. But that's not just about you. That's also about our country and about our government. Because while you have the freedom to live life as you so choose, I have got a responsibility as your vice president to make the American dream as accessible as possible. And this is why, my friends, this is why we care about all the things that we care about. Why do I care so much about having a secure border in the United States of America? It's because I believe that when you let in a flood of illegal immigration, what it does is it drives down the wages of young people and makes housing unaffordable for the entire American population. That's why we closed down the border. The left will say our immigration policy is about hating immigration, hating immigrants. We don't hate anybody. We love our fellow citizens, and because we want them to have the American dream, we shut that border down the very first day that Donald J. Trump was the President of the United States. I care about you being able to afford a home, which is why we fought so hard to fix the broken policies of the Biden administration. I want a lot of you, I'm sure there are military veterans in this room right now. I'm sure there are a lot of people who will join the military in the future, and we're proud of you. But part of America First is ensuring that we never ask you to go and do the American people's business unless it is in the interest of the United States of America, and that's how we honor the sacrifice of our troops. And that's why, my friends, that's why we care so much about free speech, as Charlie lived and died for the basic principle that we ought to be able to talk about our differences, we ought to be able to debate them, and we ought to have faith that the best way to make sure that the best idea wins is to actually just have a discussion. And that is what this event is all about. That is what Turning Points USA is all about. And I am so proud, and most of all, I'm so grateful to each and every person, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, for coming out and honoring one of the most important parts of Charlie's legacy, because we're going to have a discussion tonight, and that's what Charlie would want us to do. Now, I want to get to questions, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions, but I want to make just a couple of final points about Charlie's legacy in politics. The most important thing about Charlie is that he was a great husband and a great father. Erica told me probably 12 hours after Charlie had been pronounced dead, she was just absolutely devastated. She was unable, you know, if you've ever known anybody who's grieving, sometimes it's unable, they're unable to even hold a single thought for more than a few seconds. And what Erica told me, and I'm going to get a little emotional, is that she said that Charlie never yelled at her, he never cussed at her, and that to me is a great legacy to leave as a husband and a father, for your wife to be able to say that my husband was always good to me, and Charlie was a good man. But he also had the legacy of believing in political debate, and he was the most effective person in politics that I have ever seen. And by the way, that's not because Charlie always agreed with me and the president's policies. I remember one time in particular where Charlie Kirk called me, and guys, he was mad. It was one, you know, I wouldn't say the last conversation that I had with him, but it was in the last few months of his life, and he called me and he said, JD, I'm really worried that what's going on in the Middle East right now is going to lead the United States into a protracted military conflict. I've never told anybody that Charlie was really worried about that in the final months of his life. Now, here's the thing. Charlie was so effective, and he was so trusted by both me and the President of the United States that when Charlie made that phone call, I didn't say, screw you, you don't know what you're talking about. I listened to him. And I really believe that one of the reasons why the President of the United States knocked out the Iranian nuclear facilities, but never got the United States into a protracted military conflict and never lost a single American in a Middle Eastern conflict is because we had the wisdom and the good sense to recognize that the American people are done with American troops dying in unnecessary foreign conflicts. But Charlie Kirk reminded me of that. Charlie Kirk. So that was a great moment for our country. It was a great moment for my friendship with Charlie Kirk, because friendship is not just about telling everybody what they want to hear. It's not just about agreeing with everybody all the time. It's about having the trust in another human being that you can tell them they're wrong and actually encourage them to change their mind. Or in that case, not necessarily even tell us that we were wrong, but make sure that we were thinking about all the options. And of course, under the president's leadership, we were doing exactly that. But Charlie was so good at that. And I think that's one of the ways in which I want all of you to honor your legacy. Obviously, you care about our great nation or you wouldn't be here. A lot of you will go on to become future leaders in business or in politics. A lot of you will run campaigns. A lot of you will work on campaigns. A lot of you will be future leaders. There might even be a lowly future Vice President of the United States in this very room. But here's the thing that I want all of you to remember. Charlie wasn't effective just because he had opinions. A lot of people have opinions. Charlie was effective because he was courageous, because he worked very hard, and because he made his vision a reality. And so if you care about this country, as I know all of you do, don't just complain about social media. Get up and get involved in a campaign. If you want a better policy outcome, even from an administration that you voted for, then get out and get involved and making your voice heard. If you care about this country, love it enough to get involved in the process and how we govern it. That is the only way we are going to save the United States of America, and that is perhaps the greatest contribution that you can make to Charlie Kirk's legacy, is getting involved in saving this country. I'm in the fight, and I know every single one of you are with me. God bless you, and thank you for having me.
All right, folks, we've been with this Turning Point event, USA event, I should say, in Oxford for about 30 minutes or so. We're going to take a 2-minute break. On the other side, we're going to go to Democratic leaders talking about these snap lapses and what folks should be doing. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. After our 2-minute break, we're going to go to Democratic leaders discussing SNAP benefits. We know that SNAP funding is coming to an end on November 1st. Millions of Americans are going to be impacted by this. So let's listen in as the Democrats talk about it.
Senator Klobuchar, our ranking member on agriculture, and Senator Lujan, our ranking member on the subcommittee dealing with SNAP. So look, right now we're staring down the barrel at two crises at once. A health care crisis and a hunger crisis, and both are caused by one man, Donald Trump. We're now 3 days from open enrollment. Today the window shopping begins. People are going to see drastic increases in their health care costs. People are going to sit at the dinner table Friday night with a hole in the pit of their stomach and saying, how are we going to do this? We can't afford another $4,000 or $5,000 a year, $10,000, even $20,000 in some cases for health care. How are we going to do without health care, but how are we going to pay for health care? And now, for the first time in history, a president, Donald Trump, is refusing to fund SNAP during a shutdown. 42 million Americans, hungry children, middle-class families someone's lost the job, veterans, senior citizens who struggle to pay for their food. All of these people will lose their SNAP benefits, not because the money's gone, not because it's not permitted, because Donald Trump ordered it stopped. Donald Trump is a vindictive politician and a heartless man. Let's be clear, this does not need to happen. Never before, under any president, Democrat or Republican, has SNAP been cut off in a shutdown, and Trump knows he can do it. Here's what he said. Yeah, everybody is going to be in good shape. Yup. Donald Trump, when asked if he would fund SNAP next month, that's what he said this October. But then all of a sudden, seeing how badly they're losing on health care, he decided to use these 42 million innocent Americans as pawns. Back in 2016, here's Sonny Perdue, the agriculture secretary. They funded it under Trump. In the last shutdown, rather 2019, January 8th, 2019. They funded it. So don't believe the bull, and I hope in every story you will write that they can fund it on their own. And I'll tell you something else. John Thune is responsible. The Hawley bill now has 11 Republican co-sponsors and many, many Democrats, including myself, Senator Klobuchar, and Senator Lujan. We have all co-sponsored the Hawley bill. Today, tomorrow, if John Thune would put it on the floor, it would pass overwhelmingly. But he's afraid of Trump. He's going along in this heartless, cruel thing in Trump. Just a few weeks ago, Trump's own U.S. Department of Agriculture confirmed it had $6 billion in emergency funding to keep food aid flowing. When asked about SNAP at that point, here's what he said. Yep, everybody's going to be in good shape. That means he's got the money, folks. And these Republican lies, plain and simple, that they don't have the money, are lies. But they're vicious lies. They're hurtful lies. They're harmful lies. Okay? Last Friday, all of a sudden, Trump ordered that the USDA delete the plan and refuse to use the money. No reason, no explanation, plain cruelty. Cruelty that even Trump back in 2019 didn't do, but he's gotten so much worse and so much meaner and so much more desperate because he knows the American people are turning against him on health care, and as Amy will mention a little later, on SNAP as well. So Trump is weaponizing hunger. He's turning millions of children and seniors and veterans into political pawns. He's choosing politics over people, cruelty over compassion. And let's be clear about this. They've been on a crusade. The Republicans have been on a crusade against SNAP all year. They slashed it by $200 billion this summer to pay for their tax cuts. for billionaires. So they've never wanted SNAP, and they don't want it now. But as again, they're using these 40 million innocent people as pawns. It's a disgrace. They can end it right now. Amy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Leader, and thank you to Senator Lujan for leading a very important bill which would restore.
Okay, I'm going to have to vote. I'll be right back.
Okay, thanks. Okay, now we're say whatever we want here. So that could yeah, there a very important bill that would restore the SNAP funding, and that bill, like the Hawley bill, as we could pass right now. Senator Lujan's bill that I'm co-sponsoring with him, he's the lead of the subcommittee on agriculture, actually includes WIC as well, so I'm partial to it. But the point is that both bills we're supportive of. And so Senator Thune should call these bills up. He should call both of them up immediately, and as Senator Schumer said, they would pass. So that's why this is such a false crisis. Why is it actually a crisis? Because the House isn't here. So if we pass the bill because they're afraid to vote on the Epstein files, it will sit over in the Halloween candy jar of Speaker Johnson, where, by the way, the candy is 10% more expensive because of the Trump tariffs. Secondly, that money, as Senator Schumer has explained, is there. There is $6 billion with a B, dollars that are set aside in a contingency fund for things like this. And one of the things that really bothers me about this is that they clearly knew that this could happen, and they actually had on their website, and I know many of you have seen this, a plan that was not issued under the Biden administration. It was issued under the Trump administration, and we screenshot it, so we have it. No one denied that it was out there. It's now magically disappeared like the East Wing, and it says this. It says, the receipts were these. This plan said, congressional intent is evident, congressional intent, that SNAP's operations should continue during a shutdown, and multi-year contingency funds are also available to fund participant benefits in the event that a lapse occurs. So there it is. We would call that a smoking gun in my old job as a prosecutor. They had it on their own website. They took it down at the administration's direction. So they have the money there, or they can fund it through legislation. So let's just make that clear. Then let's go to the second question. Why are they doing this now? I guess we could ask the same question. Why did Trump pardon George Santos when a lot of people in the Republican side in the House never would have wanted that to happen? Why did he suddenly ask for $230 million from the Justice Department? Why did he say he was going to run a third term and then back down? Steve Bannon put it out there. Why are all these things happening? Dominate the news every single day. Well, they think they can fool the American people. They're seeing their premium increases now. No matter how many things they throw out there, no matter how many families they threaten to starve, the fact is the premium notices November 1st is a date. It's not a December thing. It's not a January thing. It's a now thing. And when you, as we have done in going into a number of red states, Senator Kaine and I did a press call yesterday in Texas, 75% of the people, 75% of the people who are on the Affordable Care Act live in states that Donald Trump won. And they may not be in this building today. They may not be the people that you all talk to when you're walking around the hallways and see what people think about what's happening right now in America. But the people out there, they know their costs are up, they know that chaos is up, they know that corruption is up. And healthcare is the major driver of their costs, but you add in their garden equipment, tools, audio equipment, these numbers are skyrocketing right now because of the Trump tariffs and because of the inability to even come to the table to talk about healthcare with us. He's off flying around, meeting with all these foreign leaders, negotiating with them, doing photo ops, while we're here in this building waiting for him to call up our leaders to go and negotiate on this the thing that is the number one thing on Americans' minds, and that is their costs and the cost of their health care. So I turn it over to Ben Ray.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much.
Did she say anything I wouldn't like? Anybody?
There we go. There we are.
Look, you all, I appreciate this room being full. I'm getting a chance to visit with you in the hallways, but also here. I mean, this shows the interest here. I'm going to repeat something Senator Schumer shared, and it goes to Secretary Perdue. This funding for SNAP has never lapsed in the history of the United States. Last shutdown under President Trump. They found a way to use this money. As a matter of fact, the contingency fund this year was already utilized to pay for staff for SNAP. They already tapped it once. And that plan that Senator Klobuchar talked about, here it is. Why would this magically disappear from the website? And why Speaker Johnson lying to the American people saying, oh, the law does not allow for this to happen? It's bullshit. I'll say it. I come from a small farm. I know the difference of good soil and the bullshit that goes in it, and this is the bullshit. Taking these plans down to try to lie to the American people and justify why it's okay for people to go hungry. 40 million people, plain and simple. 40 million people that are going to miss a meal. In the United States of America. And I want to commend every one of my Democratic colleagues that is a co-sponsor of this legislation, and many of us that are co-sponsors of Senator Hawley's legislation, including all of my Republican colleagues. I was asked a question earlier today by one of the journalists about, what's getting in the way of this. Well, President Donald Trump, Secretary Rowlands, and now Leader Thune. He's not allowing a vote on a floor that has bipartisan support, and heck, it could just be a UC. Which Republican's going to stand up and object to their constituents eating? And by the way, while New Mexico is at the top of the list of states that will be impacted per capita of SNAP beneficiaries, Louisiana's in the top 5. Third. I'll remind you, the state that the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives is from. I hope his constituents find him. I hope the Republican colleagues, I think Leader Schumer, you shared with us it's 75 now. 75 House Republicans that have told the press something has to be done to prevent health insurance premiums from doubling. They should come to Washington, D.C. They don't need to wait for the Speaker to invite them. Come down here. Let's get together. If the Speaker doesn't want to get in a room, how about the rest of us get in a room? I'll close with this. Chuck, as I turn this back to you. We had a governor from New Mexico, Bruce King, cattle rancher. And he always used to tell folks, if you can't come up with a solution, sometimes you need to lock them up in a barn until they come up with the solution. Well, Mr. President, come back from jetting around the world, get back to the White House. President Trump said it's up to a president to prevent a shutdown. He said it does not bode well for presidents if there's a shutdown. Well, come on back. Bring everyone back. Let's get this done. But in the meantime, all that needs to happen is for Secretary Rowlands to say, no, we're going to use this fund. We're going to pay people food. Or we're going to pay for this program to get people food. It can happen right now. There doesn't even need to be a vote. But if they want to vote, bring one of these bills up. I'm confident it'll pass the Senate floor. Maybe that'll force House Republicans to come back.
Okay, questions on this subject first. Yes.
You've said that there are legislative solutions. Obviously, you said that the administration should tap into the contingency fund, but come the weekend, if SNAP does run out, tens of millions of Americans will go hungry. Are you getting a sense from your Democratic colleagues that the pain of that and other aspects of the shutdown might outweigh this fight?
My Democratic colleagues are united in the fact that Trump and the administration can do this, not this weekend, tomorrow, today, right away. Every Democrat is a sponsor of Lujan's bill, and that's how we feel. Yes.
Thank you so much. Irrespective of the dispute on whether USDA contingency funds can be used for SNAP benefits.
It is not, wait a minute, excuse me. It is not a dispute. It is fact they can use it, and the Republicans say it.
Okay, but there's, only only 5 or 6 billion, and it's not cost $8 billion monthly just to administer. I mean, if anything, it would only last.
It does not cost $5 or $6 billion to administer. There's enough money to start feeding people right away. $6 billion's a lot of money, and they're using it for other things. $20 billion for Argentina, hundreds of millions for Kristi Noem's plane. Who are we kidding here? Yes.
What happens once it runs out? If it only lasts 2-3 weeks, do Democrats fold then?
The bottom line is they can fund it just as in 2019, just as in other shutdowns, for a long period of time.
And they also, if the contingency fund, which is $6 billion, which gets you nearly a month, 3 weeks, runs out, then they can pass Senator Lujan or Senator Hawley's bill, both of which we support. We know that there'll be 60 votes for that. Why aren't they calling it up? They're not calling it up because the House isn't here to pass it. That's the way it works. The House would have to come here. They probably would have to vote on the Epstein files, but they're choosing to let kids go hungry instead of having to vote on the Epstein files. There's no doubt about it. They have been out for 6 weeks on vacation.
Just think, if they have all this money for Argentina and all this money for other things, they have enough money to keep funding SNAP, and they know it. And I just want to say what Lujan said. Johnson just lies. He lied about on immigration, on the undocumented. He's lying about this. He just outright lies, plain and simple. It is not illegal, and his own president has done it. Yes.
Are talks ticking up as Thune indicated? Is there any conversation, any negotiation whatsoever happening behind the scenes? And if so, can you enlighten us on
Yeah, there are occasional talks between Democrats and Republicans on this issue, but our Republican colleagues don't seem to be offering anything different than what their leadership has had so far. We hope that will change. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Vitter. Understanding what you're saying about Republicans' options here for SNAP and the contingency funds, are you saying Democrats have no responsibility for the fact that
We are saying the Republicans can fund it now, and they're using these people as hostages. Plain and simple. Next. That's the answer. The answer is they can fund it right now. Okay? Right now.
Leadership on SNAP and on health care broadly.
And by the way, we don't want to pit health care and food. They do. We think you can have both. Yes.
On SNAP and on the ACA, Leader Thune said yesterday he had just spoken to President Trump and that the president would be willing to sit down with you next week to talk about ACA subsidies. Is that an acceptable offer for you? If the government opens, by the way, is that an acceptable offer for you?
We've always said, they always say, do it later. Do it later. Later, to quote Martin Luther King Jr. in his letter from the Birmingham jail, means never. They have had since March to do this. They voted 3 times against it. So this idea, do it later, been there, done that. We have to do it now. The window opens. Thank you, everybody. On this subject?
All right, folks, that's going to wrap the presser from the Democrats. When we return, we're going to go back to this Turning Point event. It seems like the vice president is taking questions, so we'll go to it after this 2-minute break. And we're back from break. We're going to go back to this Turning Point event right now where the Vice President is taking questions.
To come to their own arrangement here. The way that we've come to our arrangement is she's my best friend. We talk to each other about this stuff. So we decided to raise our kids Christian. Our two oldest kids who go to school, they go to a Christian school. Our 8-year-old did his first communion about a year ago. That's the way that we have come to our arrangement. But thank you. My 8-year-old was also very proud of his first communion. Thank you, guys. I'll tell him that Old Miss wishes him the best. But I think everybody has to have this own conversation when you're in a marriage. I mean, it's true for friends of mine who are in Protestant and Catholic marriages, friends of mine who are in, atheist and Christian marriages. You just got to talk to the only advice I can give is you just got to talk to the person that God has put you with, and you've got to make those decisions as a family unit. For us, it works out. Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her, and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way. But if she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, and so that doesn't cause a problem for me. That's something you work out with your friends, with your family, with the person that you love. Again, one of the most important Christian principles is that you respect free will. Usha's closer to the priests who baptized me than maybe I am. They talk about this stuff. My attitude is you figure this stuff out as a family, and you trust in God to have a plan, and you try to follow it as best as you can, and that's what I try to do. I want to make a final point. So I don't want to cut you off. I want to be respectful to all the people behind you in line. But I want to make this point about immigration, okay? If you ask the question, what is the exact right number of immigrants for the United States to let in, it is just very specific on the context. If you go back to the 1920s, the United States passed an Immigration Reform Act that effectively cut down immigration to close to zero for 40 years in this country. And what happened over those 40 years? The many, many people who had come from many different foreign countries and different foreign cultures, they assimilated into American culture. And there was an expectation that they would assimilate into American culture. I think we have two problems in our immigration system today. And my guess is you're probably a slightly more leftist political persuasion, liberal political persuasion, maybe not. But here's the thing. I remember back in my establishment GOP days when I was still very early getting involved in Republican politics, I remember a conservative think tank person who told me that one of the reasons why immigration was really good is that if you had enough diversity in a country, people would mistrust each other and they wouldn't join labor unions. Okay? So when I see a lot of left-wing people who theoretically support organized labor saying we need to flood the country with a limitless number of immigrants, they're unwilling to set any limitations on it. My response to that is you are destroying the very social trust on which American freedom and prosperity was built. And that is really important to me. So the honest answer to your question, what is the exact number of immigrants America should accept in the future? Right now, the answer is far less than we've been accepting. We have got to become a common community again, and you can't do that when you have such high numbers of immigration, which is one of the reasons why we have the immigration policy we do. Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Vice President Vance. I just want to say it's an honor to actually be able to talk to you.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. One of my biggest questions is, I feel like one of the biggest problems that America is facing today is that ever-growing social political divide, and we're seeing this on the Republican and Democratic side, but we've seen that a refusal to cooperate with the other side has led to some major issues, including right now the government shutdown, and I wonder, as the party in power, what are your plans to address that issue towards, reaching that olive branch out to the other side to actually come to an agreement on how to go forward with our government?
Look, it's a very good question, and let me just say on the government shutdown in particular, the reality here is that there's a very simple bill that just reopens the government. It does it through pretty much the end of the year. That got every single Republican in the House of Representatives to support it, and then it got 52 Republicans in the Senate and 3 Democrats in the Senate to support it. But because of weird Senate procedural rules, it requires a 60-vote threshold. So on that issue in particular, when you have every single Republican with like 2 exceptions in both houses of Congress, I feel pretty confident. I know that I'm partisan. I know I have an R next to my name, but I feel pretty damn good saying the shutdown is the Democrats' fault because we voted again and again to open it. Now, but there's a broader question there, and I think most Americans, whatever their political persuasion, would actually like the country's political parties to work together better to solve the problems. And look, and I agree with that. And my approach when I was in the United States Senate was to try to find some issues where we could agree with the other side on and try to work with them on it. And like, let me give you one example. I really worry about concentration in the corporate sector. I worry about big corporate monopolies. I worry that when you have only 1 or 2 companies dominating an entire sector, it's bad for liberty and it's bad for prosperity. So you may be shocked to hear this, but I actually worked with Elizabeth Warren on some anti-monopoly stuff when I was in the United States Senate. But here's the problem. The problem is there is actually a lot of things where we could work across the aisle. There are a lot of President Trump is in my view, you haven't seen organized labor ever get behind a Republican at least in 100 years like they have behind Donald J. Trump. There are a lot of areas of common ground on that question. The problem is, as reasonable as some of these people can be in private, in public, the current obsession of the Democratic Party in leadership, I'm not saying every Democrat in the country, but the current obsession of every Democrat in Congress is get President Trump, fight President Trump, attack President Trump. It is impossible for us to work across the aisle unless a person is willing to put down their partisan sword, shut the hell up about fake scandals related to Donald Trump, and actually work with us. That's the way you make this happen. Next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. I'm going to try to get through as many as possible, guys. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Vice President.
Hello.
Hi. I actually drove here all the way from Memphis, Tennessee. Go Tigers. So I'm sure everyone here is aware of the Memphis Safe Task Force that has been in the city for about a month now, and I checked a little earlier. As of this morning, I believe they've arrested 1,700 people and seized about 300 illegal guns. So I want to ask, how does this law enforcement objective jive with Attorney General Pam Bondi's pledge to make the Department of Justice a more pro-Second Amendment Department of Justice? Because I'm sure most people in here support the Second Amendment. So how can Republicans and this Department of Justice use the current gun laws that are on the books that a lot of pro-Second Amendment advocates disagree with, that we wanted to overturn in the big beautiful bill, but we didn't get it?
Yeah. So I understand the question. And by the way, I supported some of those changes in the big beautiful bill. I know the President of the United States did too. We didn't have the votes to get them in there, and that's as simple as that. But I know exactly what you're talking about because there were a couple of issues in particular. I talked to some of my Second Amendment friends. But here's the basic issue. We don't want people who have violated the law, who have committed felonies. The Second Amendment, like every other amendment, it's about due process. It's that you don't have your rights violated unless there is due process of law. If you're a person who's committed 4 felonies and a court has lawfully ordered that you shouldn't have a gun and you're running around with a firearm, I don't have any problem with law enforcement saying you don't get to have that firearm that is illegally possessed, illegally obtained. I think that's basic law and order. Now again, if you had, if you had somebody come in and say, well, we don't think that person should have a firearm, but they haven't violated any law, that's a totally separate question. That's not what we're focused on. What we're focused on is violent crime and people who have violated, the bodily autonomy of another human a person who has committed an act of violence against one of their fellow citizens, we're going to clean up the streets, get those people off the streets, and make America safe for the American citizens again. That is our entire law and order policy, and I think we're doing a pretty good job at it. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a Christian man, and I'm just confused why that there's this notion that we might have owe Israel something, or that they're our greatest ally, or that we have to support this multi-hundred-billion-dollar foreign aid package to Israel to cover this, to quote Charlie Kirk, ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused at why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
Yeah, so let me say a few things about this. First of all, when the President of the United States says America first, that means that he pursues the interests of Americans first. That is our entire foreign policy. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have alliances, that you're not going to work with other countries from time to time. And that is what the President believes, is that Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States and we're going to work with them in that case. Sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the President of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the President of the United States, they're not controlling this President of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East. Now, you ask about, sort of Jews disagreeing with Christians on certain religious ideas. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the realities is that Jews do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Obviously, Christians do believe that. There are some significant theological disagreements between Christians and Jews. My attitude is, let's have those conversations. Let's have those disagreements when we have them. But if there are shared areas of interest, we ought to be willing to do that too. For example, one thing I really, really care about is the preservation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Christians believe that that is the site where Jesus Christ was crucified, and also that his tomb is right there as well. My attitude is, if we can work with our friends in Israel to make sure that Christians have safe access to that site, that's an obvious area of common interest. I'm fine with that. What I'm not okay with is any country coming before the interests of American citizens, and it is important for all of us, assuming we're American citizens, to put the interest of our own country first. That's what we're going to do. That's what we try to do every single day, I promise you. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. I'm the president of our pro-life organization here at Ole Miss, Rebels for Life. And I myself, as the president, am 100% pro-life. And I know you've stated, you being Catholic, that in the past you've stated that you're 100% pro-life. But since joining the presidential campaign as the VP, you've kind of wavered how you see abortion. So I'm just wondering what your stance is right now.
Sure.
And do you think that someone else's right to liberty trumps someone else's right to life?
Well, first of all, I appreciate your question, and I appreciate the work that you do. You asked the question, do I think somebody else's right to liberty trumps somebody else's right to life? No, I do not. I, in fact, do not believe that. Now, you said, and I'm going to take issue with something you said, just the premise of the question, which is that I've wavered on the pro-life issue. I really do believe that the president has been the most pro-life president in the history of the United States of America. Now, that said, there are two things that I think we have to keep in mind here. Now, one is the very, very hard question of, when we talk about our abortion policy, there are some very, very difficult edge cases. There are cases where you've got, an 11-year-old girl who was raped, who it would be unsafe for her to bring the baby to term. You've got situations where bringing a baby to term would cause serious bodily harm, maybe death for the mother. That's one of the reasons why we believe in the exception in these cases where you have, again, they're edge cases, they're rare. I think the pro-abortion community would have you believe that's 90% of abortions. That's not true. But we got to be honest about the fact that there are some edge cases. The second thing I'd say about this is that we have to be prudential and practical in what can get accomplished. And there may be disagreements about what exactly that is, but if you look at the pro-life victories that the President of the United States has been able to achieve, he's been able to achieve them because he has worked within the system that we have. If your attitude is you are going to pursue the most aggressive pro-life option, even if it means you lose every election and every outcome means that you're going to be in a situation where the Democrats have abortion on demand up to the moment of birth to the very end. You've got to work within the political constraints that we have. Now, here let me just say something about this. And somebody asked me earlier about my Christian values. And one of the points I made is that when the settlers came to the New World, they found a very widespread child sacrifice. I imagine there are some people who don't agree with my view on the pro-life issue. Let me just make an observation. If you go to historical archaeological sites where there were brothels, and the two oldest businesses in the world are gambling and prostitution, so there were brothels even in very ancient civilizations. If you go back to ancient brothels and you dig up the bones of the women who are working in these places, you will very often find a lot of children who were buried with them.
All right, folks, closing out our 2 o'clock show here on WCNC Plus. Don't forget, we are 100 days out from the Olympics in Milan Cortina in Italy. And in fact, there's going to be a special at 9 o'clock right here on WCNC Plus. You don't even have to change the channel, about going to Italy and really just the tour of Italy that is so many folks of what they're going to see for the Olympics. That'll be right after us, right here on WCNC Plus. We'll see you at 11.